and welcome to another exciting episode of Straight Talk with Roger Hunt, Unscripted. Today we have a very special guest with us, none other than Dr. Stephen Haymon. He's a noted psychologist and book author, and does quite a bit, but I'm going to let Doctor, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? How you doing today?
I'm doing well. I have been in practice 43 years.
Wow.
I have been an author since 2007. I have several books out. I have these two out, which is Stress Overcoming Real Life Issues with God, and then I have Stress Climbing Out of the Pits with God. I have two books that will be completed by the end of this month, beginning of next month. Stress Rising Above This Grass, and then The War Within, Combating Post-Traumatic Stress, which is right on time with what has just happened at Fort Hood again, which was about 5 years ago. So the one I said a minute ago, The War Within, Combating Post-Traumatic Stress, that's what it talks about. It talks about post-traumatic stress or traumatic brain injury, and people who have been exposed to various types of trauma, the effects it has on them, not just presently, but in the future and stuff. So all of this that I've done in the last 43 years, Roger, has set me up to do the writing and the workshops and the things that I do now.
Okay, so with addition to the writing and your private practice, it's a private practice?
Private practice, right.
Okay, talk a little bit about the post-traumatic stress. How does one get into a situation like that, or what's... Some people can be exposed to trauma, and they don't have such a profound reaction as the military personnel. And it's sort of subterfuge at this point. It's kind of hush-hush exactly who it is, although we know that the psychiatrists, the major 5 years ago did that, and that's because they're trying to keep it undercover in a manner of speaking. What happens is someone experienced trauma, and they may not, because the environment they're in, it may not be manifested as trauma, and it sort of displays itself or exhibits once that person comes out of the environment. And one of the things that I focus in on the last book, The War Within, I focus a lot on the military because I visit the military bases and I work with the military personnel. But people who experience the Katrina episode where they lost everything, including lives, things that they had worked for forever, people who have been victimized, whether it was a man or a woman, and later in life it starts manifesting itself, and it has a profound effect on the person as their thinking process and how they relate to other people. Because I was going to ask you, as far as trauma, what type of traumas, but you mentioned some things, a death, the loss of a home or fire, I guess certain things, certain events can affect a person different than other people. So, and I guess there can lead to various setbacks or...
There are personality types that are more susceptible to what we call post-traumatic stress or trauma. And so the people who, and I hate to identify, but narcissistic people tend to have a less effect on them, or a sociopathic person who really doesn't have a conscience. They operate, the trauma would not affect them because of the defense skills that they have. A person that's narcissistic does not have the ability to see someone else's perspective. It's more than the grandiose view of themselves. It's all about me. But it's just the inability to read other people and have compassion and sensitivity to those people. Most people, because all of us have certain characteristics as it relates to personality types, but some people are more susceptible. So since it leaves an indelible print, whether the person has been victimized, whether they lost stuff in a fire, whether they lost stuff in I'm sure the people here in St. Louis today who experienced the tornadic storm today, I'm sure they lost some things there. I mean, they didn't lose lives, but things. So that the next time they hear wind or hear a siren, they may have a reaction to it. So what I'm saying is essentially it really just depends on the person's coping skills, because that's what personality types are. How ingrained or the effects that it's going to have on the person. So when we talk about post-traumatic stress, how well people cope, because if I've experienced trauma as a child or I experienced trauma overseas, it's going to have some type of effect on me. But as it relates to how I relate to people, how I'm coping, it just depends on my defense mechanisms or my coping skills. Okay.
So with dealing with someone like that, how do you attempt or how do you treat if there's, you know, I mean, is it a challenge for you doing that? Because like I say, every case is different.
Every case is different. But what we attempt to do as I have dealt with people who have experienced trauma, particularly the victimization, is we approach it from several perspectives. One would be cognitive, the other would be behavioral, and the other is supportive. But even if those things are much more important than what we call pharmacotherapy, which is the psychotropic medications such as the antidepressants or the benzodiazepines or the tranquilizers or the mood stabilizers, which some people are aware of, that falls into the category of lithium or Depakote or Lamictal. And then we even use they call sleep aids or hypnotics to sort of lure the person into sleeping. Because what happens, one of the symptoms is that people will have these nightmares or the cold sweats, and they'll start isolating, and they have a perspective of a foreboding future. I mean, their future is going to be shortened, or it's going to have an effect on it. So I think the modalities, the cognitive modalities tend to be more effective, but that person has to be ready to move forward, because it can be very, very painful for that person to go through those processes.
So, and dealing with that treatment, you know, I'm thinking about a timetable in which, or if can you put a timetable? Again, each case is different. How long do you treat a person? Is it up to the individuals? Do you try to work with the physician, the family? And then that's the first part of the question. And then, are they a danger to themselves, a danger to the public?
They could be. Don't give me too many questions at once, because I want to answer the questions. First of all, first of all, when we talk about timetable, it really does depend on the person. There's a person that I've been treating for about a year now, and technically, if the person would adhere and they were mature enough to move forward with the treatment, because one of the things that we talk about as it relates to post-traumatic stress is that we want them to confront and work through those issues. Well, we have thoughts that a person has experienced something, so it is imprinted into their minds. However, what they really attempt to avoid are those feelings associated with those thoughts. So anytime they're on the edge of those thoughts, which is precipitating these feelings, what they attempt to do is circumvent those feelings so they can come to the edge and say, well, I can't go any further. So they can verbalize that I'm going to confront this person, or I'm going to look at the situation, or I'm going to dissect the situation. But until the person matures to the point of, I need to endure this pain to get over it. And so until that happens, the person can never move forward. Well, and that's like a person being anchored to a chain, and all they can do is go in circles. They can't move forward. And who has them anchored? They have themselves anchored because they don't have the maturation to move forward. As it related to the other question, which was?
That question was, are they pose a danger to themselves or to the public? Or
Yeah, and I think that depends on the person. Now, a person who's experienced trauma, such as the guy down in Fort Hood that we were talking about, we don't want to say that that person becomes depressed, because one of the symptoms of post-traumatic stress is a depressed mood. But if the person starts sinking into depressive symptoms, going into depression, seeking deeper into what we call depression with psychosis, at that point people identify that as a nervous, common people identify it as a nervous breakdown. When these voices and things are saying, these are the things you need to do to rectify these feelings that you're having, then yes, they become a danger to themselves. But in the case of Fort Hood, where the guy shot 3 people and wounded 14 people, that was something compelling telling him, this is the way you mitigate or you resolve these issues. So, but we're talking about a deep depression where you're having thoughts or voices or something telling you this is the way you do it. So we're talking about irritability, we're talking about anger, we're talking about a bunch of stuff. Normally when people are doing this, they're isolated. They're isolated from the people who will support them. That's the reason why I use that terminology, supported therapy. So the family members may have been some assistance, but because it's such a strain or so much stress put on trying to deal with the person isolates, again, another symptoms, and the support system, because it's so demanding, they go ahead and allow the person to isolate. Well, that's dangerous,
Right.
because now you don't have anyone to bounce out these thoughts that you're having in your head, that I want to take my life or I want to take someone else's life.
I was going to bring up, the Sandy Hook incident, that situation. I mean, are there signs that people can, you and I may be with a person every day. Today, one day we're with this person, and all of a sudden, I'm just saying Sandy Hook, for example, but is there something that we can see, and I guess not being a trained physician or, person to recognize, this in an individual, or individuals for that matter, to know that something's about to happen or what?
Well, there's no way that I'm going to have symptoms, whether they're post-traumatic stress symptoms or whether they're depressive symptoms, and they're not exemplified or they're not being manifested. The question is, am I really interested? Now, let me kind of break that down.
Okay.
You and I work together, and I'm this jovial, happy-go-lucky, global individual that's always interacting with people. And then I experienced the death of my son or my daughter. And you've worked with me 10, 15 years, and you know how I am. And then you start seeing these symptoms, and you say, hey man, your aura is different. How you're presenting is a little different. I'm saying, oh, I'm good, I'm cool. And so what tends to happen is I keep telling you I'm cool, but I'm isolating from you. I am not my normal self.
Right.
But you're like, okay, so he's just going through something.
Yeah.
Because he's telling me. But perhaps I have withdrawn to the point that personally, hygienic-wise, I'm not presenting the way I do. Socially wise, I'm not interacting with people, and I seem to be what they call psychomotor agitated, meaning that the least little thing is aggravating or agitating me, and I always seem angry. Well, you're seeing this, but you're not understanding these are symptoms.
What's going on, right?
Right. So the next thing you hear, and I can't remember the guy who went to Kirkwood and because they were messing with him before he went on there and shot up the board meeting and the people there. I talked to someone who knew the guy. He had these symptoms. He was going off on the deep end, but no one was willing to pay attention. Even his wife was able to pay attention because they wanted him to be okay. So they were in denial of the symptoms. And that's what I'm saying. Guys coming back from the military and their families are seeing them, they want them to be who they once were, and so they give them their space.
And that giving that person that space is not good, because it's what the rumination of all of this stuff that has built up within them is going on in their heads, and there's a compelling force that says, now you need to do something.